Today's episode covers suicide, including personal experiences and mental health challenges. These topics may be upsetting for some listeners. If you're feeling affected, please reach out for support. You can contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or speak to someone you trust. All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Curry, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. You may have heard the saying that everyone has their own story. And while sometimes we may feel like we're alone in the world and we're going through something that no one has ever gone through, the reality is that we can all learn something from each other. Today, I've invited Catherine Owens, a speaker and author of Extraordinary Stories, a book that was very recently published. Now, when I heard about the book, I asked Catherine to come onto the show, and she said yes. So, Catherine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's am I right in saying that? Would you agree that every person has their own story? And because this is, for me, I haven't read the whole book from start to finish, but from what I've seen and from what I've read, the idea of extraordinary stories is the fact that you've come across these certain stories and people over the years, and the impression I get is that you just decided to put it into a book. But if you could maybe just explain the book to those that haven't heard about it yet.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, it's only been out in the world for a couple of weeks, so it's not on everyone's radar just yet. But I said to my publisher when I first met her that I'm going for global domination. So we are of the literary kind, of course. But so hopefully it will be something that more people hear about. Yeah, but absolutely happy to give you a bit of a rundown. So I have got two boys. They are 11 and 14, and they were extremely strong readers and then just lost the love of it and weren't interested in fiction. So the conversation started that they really wanted to read biographical stories. If I was going to be able to get them to keep reading, that's what they wanted. And there just wasn't anything out there for their age. They were strong readers, but it needed to be engaging, which a lot of adult biographies go into, their childhood at great length and things like that. And it's just, if you are a soccer player and you love the idea of being the next, World Cup superstar, reading about, I don't know, it could be Messi or Ronaldo or any of those names. I don't know that many of the recent soccer players, but reading about all of that fine detail is not something that you're going to keep the interest of a young reader. So the other option was that the content was really age inappropriate. It talked about abusive childhoods and things like that, but not through the lens of thinking about a young reader. So I just couldn't find anything. And the idea sort of bumped around in my head for a while that there has to be a book that exists. And I tell the story that, my kids are very lucky. They have a lot of opportunities open to them. And so sometimes, even though they're great kids, they can sound a bit entitled. You've asked them to empty the dishwasher, and meanwhile you've taken them to 64 sport trainings that week and, killed yourself trying to make sure they've got enough food and all the fun in the world. And they act as though you've asked them to, eat off both of their own legs. And so I went into the bookstore and said, I really want to find a book that teaches my children in a non-traumatic way how lucky they are. And there wasn't anything. And it blew my mind that we have got this audience who they become reluctant readers, and they have the capacity to learn so much about what the world is like. So I just couldn't believe that I couldn't find this book, but I was sure that I would find one eventually, and I did not have it on my radar to write a book myself. But what was interesting was I am the type of person who will often hear people's life stories because, there's certain people who there must be a facial expression perhaps, where they are someone who will get spoken to. You say, hey, how are you at the supermarket? And the person goes, oh my goodness, and tells you their whole life story. So I do know a lot of people that have interesting jobs or experiences. But every single person I spoke to, once the idea of the book came about, every single person I spoke to was someone I already knew that was already a part of my circle, and they were more than happy. Every person I asked said yes to participating in the book. So it just proved to me that if I know all these extraordinary people, so do you, so do our kids, so do your families, so do everybody. And we just don't take the time to ask. So, and people want to share their story, is what I found. So it was a really interesting process that it proved that those people are already in our circles and are really eager to tell their stories. And then that led to the interview process, which, I'm more than happy to talk about. But it then gave me the opportunity to realize that these people are going through these experiences and our children or our young adults can learn from that as well.
I love that. And I love that the inspiration was something that started with your kids, of you wanting them
Yeah.
to appreciate the things they have. And it makes sense because a lot of us, as parents especially, and it's funny because we didn't expect ourselves to ever do it, but we're doing what our parents did to us. But to remind our
Mm.
kids how lucky they are, and when when we were younger, the things we heard all the time was, you're lucky. Some people don't even have food to eat, and blah, blah.
Yeah.
And obviously that's true in today's
Yep.
society, whether you live in the modern world or any part of the globe. But at the same time, there are many people around us going through certain physical and mental struggles that
Yes.
we may or may not know about. And I love that you asked, like I did a podcast episode literally, I think 2 weeks ago, about the power of asking, the importance of asking people, not being too embarrassed to ask. And I love that you, had the, I don't want to say had the guts, but just had the, you're open-minded enough to ask someone and say about their story, wanting to talk to them about it, not without feeling
Yeah. Thank
fear
you.
of rejection or fear that they might get offended, for example, and I love the fact that
Yeah.
they were actually open and wanting to talk about it, which is so
I think it
powerful because
proves
it
that
shows
people
that,
do. Yeah,
yeah, I was just about to say, I think what you're about to say, that it proves that people do want to help others and they do want others to know about their story so they can learn from it.
exactly. Well, and it's not just I mean, like I said, for my children who are so lucky, it was a matter of teaching them about, because they don't listen to us as parents when we say, you have no idea how lucky you are. There are children starving around the world, there's war zones, whatever. That is so unrelatable to them. Thank goodness, like how do you teach a child or a teenager about how lucky they are? Like, let's say you've made them, like I made for dinner last night, steak, baked beans, and eggs for my kids, and they were okay with it, but they would have rathered something else. It just wasn't their favorite. And they weren't rude about it, but I knew that, that was just a quick, easy dinner and that's what you're getting, so you're going to eat it. Now, it was a beautiful piece of steak, it was some delicious baked beans, it was some lovely fried eggs, and it was nutritious and it gave them what they needed. How can you possibly tell a child you should be grateful when they've never known an empty belly? They've never known a true feeling of fear for your life. How do you say you're lucky you don't live in a war zone when they have no point of reference for what that means to live in fear every day for your life? And I don't know that fear either. So how do we teach kids to be empathetic when they cannot relate because their brains just haven't got to that point where they can watch the news and, they can say, oh, that's awful. But we don't want them to understand it because that would mean that they've experienced that trauma. So it wasn't just a matter of realizing how lucky they are. It was also a matter of saying, well, if you sit and listen to these people who have, like we have people in the book who have experienced chronic illness, loss, addiction, feelings of suicidal ideation, like I could go on and on about the different themes in the book. And that is something that people go, whoa, that's a bit scary to talk to young people about. Do you know what young people are already seeing and hearing at school? They're talking about, all sorts of horrific stuff that parents have no idea and wouldn't want to know. So I wanted them to have that. What's the best word? The best word I think would be protected exposure to the traumas in the world, but purely from the essence of getting an understanding. So if they see someone at school who, I don't know, maybe they've gone from looking healthy to looking unwell and rather than thinking, oh, gross, their skin's all covered in spots, I don't know, whatever it might be, thinking, oh dear, I wonder what the story is behind that, and having a feeling of empathy before judgment. Because judgment, we don't want our kids to walk around going, ew, a homeless person, ew, a fat person, ew, a person of a certain race. We don't want them to do that. Most of us don't. how can they have those feelings if we don't teach them what it feels like to be, racially profiled or shamed for, body shamed or anything like that? The only way I believe we can get that message across is by humanizing those stories and giving them real life examples of what people felt and how they handled that situation. I think that's the only way of teaching a child those lessons as well as gratitude.
That's so true. And for me, I think as you start talking, as people start telling you their story, you get to also look at their perspective. And some people will, to you, they'll come across as being really strong and positive. And I think that's part of what also encourages you to appreciate what you have. Like, for example, I just had a meeting,
Yes.
I just did a review with a client just before this, and we are sitting down and she's gone through some health things and she's still going through some and some personal things in her life. And to me, again, it's, I'm not in her shoes, so I can't predict. But just from what I can see, she's so positive and strong, and I'm so confident she's going to get through this. And
Mm.
hearing that story, makes me. It just gives me some insight as to how she's approaching this, and it shows that yes, and she's got a smile on her face, and you don't know what people are going through. I even actually cracked a bit of a joke about how when our first son was born, I was just telling her how at the hospital, this was like 13 years ago, but
Mhm.
how a lot of the nurses, not a lot, one or two of the nurses were being, pretty moody and, we didn't really have the best experience, let's just say that. But I didn't judge
Yep,
either because you don't know, that person could be coming off night shift. They could be going through
that's right.
something personally. And I think I'm in a very privileged position where I get to talk to people about their lives, and I'm lucky enough that they trust me enough to share their stories with me as well. And as I hear about people's stories and situations, it makes you realize, wow, like there are so many strong people in the world. It's just that most of them usually just don't show off about it. They don't talk about what they went through and what they're going through in their lives.
Time. There's not the time. You have you'd be the same area as, I don't know, a bartender, a hairdresser, all those sort of jobs. There's no time to, you see someone at the supermarket and you say, hey, how are you? No one's going to go, oh, well, when I was a child, this happened. There's just, when do you get the opportunity other than with our very close friends? And even then, sometimes it's hard to get a decent block of time with our close friends as well, as what life is so busy. And you think about, when you do have friends over, let's say you've got a house full of grown-ups and their kids. The kids are off downstairs playing and the grown-ups might be having a chat, but the kids aren't involved in those conversations of, oh, so how's your mum going? We send them away. We don't think they're interested. We don't want to bore them. We don't want it to feel like the friend has to, speak about something private in front of the child. They don't get that sort of exposure to adult conversations where they hear about the hardships that families are going through. And I think that means they think that everyone else's house is perfect compared to theirs. So they think no one's dad is as grumpy as mine. No one's mum is as strict as mine. I'll never forget my son, my eldest, saying to me a couple of years ago, why do you love me so much? No one else's mum loves them as much as you love me. And he was angry because I wasn't letting him do certain things that I thought were poor choices. And I said, aren't you lucky? And he sort of went, no. And he walked off. And I mean, it was funny, obviously, but he was frustrated. And I thought, darling, you don't realize how many other mothers have said, no, they can't go to this thing. All you're hearing is about the friends that have said, hey, come to the party or whatever it was. They're not being exposed to other households, other people's situations. And so, again, how could they possibly know what they don't know, what they're not being shown? And I spoke at a school yesterday and I asked the boy, it was a school full of boys, and I said, who here has a relative or a neighbor or somebody in your life that every time you see them, they're trying to tell you some story and it's always the same story about, I don't know, something they achieved as a kid or some hardship they went through. And you roll your eyes and you think, oh, great, Granny's telling us about, whatever it is again. And every single child put their hand up and was laughing, going, oh, yes, we've got a person in our life like that. And I said, how many people have actually sat and listened to that story to make the person feel like, okay, I've now told my grandson the story about, surviving the war or whatever it might be. And no one's hand stayed up. Everyone put their hand down. They have dismissed those people over and over again. And I laughed and I said, now don't get me wrong. I have a grandmother and, people in my life that you'd go, oh God, I'd have to, maybe have a couple of drinks before I'd want to sit and listen to that story. But we all do that. We dismiss each other. So there isn't the opportunity. We don't sit around the campfire as a village anymore listening to stories. We just, how do we know not to eat the red berries that are poisonous? It's because we Google it or, that we learn those things, but we're not hearing those stories from our own village. And I use that term in the sense of our support network. So my book and the hope was hoping to be able to expose kids to those stories in an essence, but also encourage them to think, oh, actually, maybe I should ask Granny or whoever it is about that story they've always wanted to tell me, because maybe it is interesting. And I guarantee it is, because, every single person that I meet, I think I wonder what their story is. I wonder if they'd want to be part of my next book.
Yes. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a free 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au. And speaking of that, are there any, this is a silly question, I'm not going to say are there any, which of the stories in the book is probably your favorite? And it may be hard to choose a favorite, but what's a story that you'd love to
like
sort
my
of
children, Michael.
briefly...
How could you even ask?
Is there a one-person story in that book that you'd like to share with us? Not the whole story, of course, but just like it's...
No.
A bit of a sample as to some insight into that person's life, what they went through, what you've learned from it. And because I want people to, including me, to just really understand the types of stories in this book, because when you're explaining it to me, it sounds so intriguing, and it makes me want to go through every one of them, because it sounds like each one of them is so different.
It is, absolutely. And what's funny is, so I've been very mindful. So I do just want to include that throughout the process of writing this book, I had multiple things in mind. One of them was the safety and the privacy of my interviewees. They were very precious to me, and I wanted to be trusted, and I wanted to do them justice. So we went through the process of using an organisation called Arts Law, and they are a legal service for people in the arts. They make it sort of a more affordable way of getting the legal support that you need. So we had all the correct release forms and things like that to make sure everyone was protected. A lot of people have used pseudonyms because obviously their life is, they are private otherwise, and I didn't want anything to be able to be Googled. And then we also have two stories that are from First Nations women, and their stories are particularly amazing. But I also went through the process of making sure I had the right it's called ICIP, and it's the Cultural Intellectual Property Storyteller Agreements, to make sure that it was culturally respecting as well. And the next step we went through was actually contacting Kids Helpline. They have an amazing group of people who went through the book for me and made sure that the language was really appropriate for the age that I was targeting. Things that I didn't know, like I had used the term attempted suicide. And when I say the book touches on suicide, it's not glorifying anything. It's not giving examples of methods or anything like that. It's just touching on the fact that those people either had someone in their life, or they themselves went through those moments of thinking, I don't know if I want to be here anymore, which I think is so relatable for a young audience to understand that they are not alone in having those thoughts. But every story has an outcome of hope and recovery and achievement at the end of it. So every story ends on a light note, even if there are hard terms. But Kids Helpline made sure that I changed that wording to lived experience of suicide, which I thought was, I sort of didn't understand it, and then they explained it and I was just blown away. So if you use the term attempted suicide, that means you tried something and failed, and that's another failure in your life. How useless are you? You couldn't even do that right. Whereas lived experience, I thought, is actually such a beautiful term. It means you survived it, you went through it and you got through it and you're here still. So things like that I didn't know, we made sure we had the right eyes on it to get those messages right, because I wanted to do it responsibly for the reader as well, not just for those interviewees. I didn't want to leave any readers feeling worse than when they started reading it. I want everyone to read it and feel uplifted. And Kids Helpline gave the book to their youth advocacy program, which is a group of young people that have gone through the systems that are in place in one way, shape, or form from all over the country. And the feedback we have got from these young people has been amazing. Every single person has said that it really gave them a feeling of hope, and it would have given them that feeling when they were, they're all sort of mostly out of that age group now that I'm particularly targeting. But so that was amazing. But I just wanted to make sure that was in there to show that because I won't get to read the whole book to you today, that there's been the correct eyes have been on the book to make sure that it is a responsible project as well as an interesting one. So my favorite chapters, it's so hard to choose. That's what I was going to say. At the beginning of each chapter, we have trigger warnings. So if the reader is feeling vulnerable or there's a topic that just is not one that they want to be exposed to, you are aware before you even start the chapter that those things are mentioned in there. So that was really important to me as well. So the funny thing is, with the stories, each one is so different. And even though there's, some trigger warnings that are, similar in different chapters, it actually proves that we all experience the same sort of emotions. We all know we've all felt fearful at certain times. We have all felt alone. We have all felt like we don't belong. And yet, even though people in the book have experienced such different actual life situations, it proved that where I didn't think I could relate to a First Nations woman, someone who's part of our LGBTQ community. Who else have we got? We've got an army veteran. We've got two people in wheelchairs, including an amputee. How could I possibly relate to what they have been through? I haven't been through those same things. But when you realize that those people have all gone through those same emotions that we all know from different things, it means we can actually relate to every person on earth. And that was the thing that I took away from it, going, that means I can relate to everybody. So the homeless guy, whoever it is, if our kids can understand that those people still feel the same things we do, my hope is that they will walk away from that knowing that those people are not, the unknown is not scary, because actually you definitely can relate to those people. But to answer your question, Douglas has been the resounding favourite. Douglas is an 87-year-old proud gay man. His story is fascinating. There is elements of darkness. He's gone through some hard things, but he is such a ray of sunshine. He turned up to my book launch a couple of weeks ago in the most outlandish, stunningly bright outfit you've ever seen. And just no matter where you looked in the room, your eyes were drawn to Douglas. His story is one that is about the concept of no matter what you are doing, if you decide you're not happy, it is always okay to change direction. That was kind of the message that I got from him. This man has had more variations on his life than you could possibly imagine. He has been every type of job you could imagine, and his message was one of, reinventing yourself over and over again is okay, even at his age. So he was definitely my favorite, and I'd love to read part of his. But there's also, every story, there is something that you will take away from it and go, wow, I really, hadn't thought of that. So I'd love to read. There's a little section of Douglas's that I really like. I'll just find it now. Here it is. Douglas opened up a clothing store that made all kinds of dresses, including wedding gowns. When he wasn't at the store, he worked for an insurance company, and at night he cleaned a local bowling alley. He took up bowling as a hobby and participated in an event where he bowled for 200 hours straight and was listed in the Guinness Book of World Records. His photo was in all the local papers, and he felt like a celebrity. One night, many months later, Douglas and his friend were out to dinner, and as the restaurant closed for the night, a big group of people with strong American accents came down the stairs. It was a band called the Drifters, who were an R&B group with a series of chart-topping songs and who have since become members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Douglas and his friend offered the band a lift to their hotel, and Douglas couldn't believe it when one of the band members saw his name and said, "Hey, aren't you the guy I read about in the New York Times that bowled for 200 hours? The world-famous musician then said, "I should get your autograph." It was just such a good look into Douglas's story. And he has had so many different variations. He was a paramedic. He was an artist, like an artist who exhibited. He was a beautician and like body waxing therapist. He has done more things than you can imagine, and he's a very good, as he would have picked up with his sewing. He's very good at it, and he now makes flag bunting, like the strings of flags that get hung up for celebrations and things like that. He now makes a ridiculous number of meters of flag bunting and gives it to the children's hospital as a donation to put up in the wards where the sick children are. So even at 87, he still spends his days sewing, and he is just an amazing human and was an absolute delight to get to know more and more. So that was probably Douglas has got to be, even though his story isn't necessarily the most gripping or the most scary or shocking, he is such a character, and it was such a joy to be able to share his story.
And how old was he? 80?
87 he is now.
87. Wow. And when you interviewed him, I'm assuming he was in his 80s.
85-ish, I think I interviewed him just before he turned 86. But yeah, he came to the launch and was the absolute belle of the ball. He was so funny, and he was chatting to everybody and getting selfies with people, and he's an absolute delight.
Yes, yes. Wow. It's such a I don't know. I just think, like, especially someone that old, like, again, you'd look at someone that old, you think, okay, what's the best story that they have to tell you, about their lives, what that they bought some biscuits last week on sale, or
That's right.
or that they won at the local bowls competition last week,
Yeah.
but yeah, and it just shows as well that such a, someone that can be underestimated can have such a powerful story that has so many
Well,
elements
how
to it.
often do we go to funerals of, often, hopefully somebody old? We like to think that all the funeral, not that that's the case, but, it's always much easier to go to a funeral for a really old person who you think, oh,
Yes.
well, they had a really good innings. But how often do we go to those and think, oh my God, I had no idea they did all that? They were,
Yes.
I don't know, doing something crazy during wartime, or they had some amazing job you didn't know about, or they were world famous, I don't know, tap dancers, whatever it is. And you walk away and this person is gone. You can ask the family, of course, but you can't ask them again. You won't ever get that opportunity to get it straight from their mouth again. And yet we find out at that point how amazing they were. And I always think that's such a shame that those stories are told in our eulogies
Mm.
rather than beforehand. So
Yeah.
I love the idea. I've actually got a man lined up for book 2 who's in his 80s as well, and I haven't got the full story of his life yet. But his niece, I think it is, recommended him to me. And there's the whole lot of I've got a whole list of people ready to interview for book 2. We're just looking at whether we target a young audience again, or whether maybe we write one aimed at adults that goes into a bit more detail, and then it gives the opportunity to get the parents on board, and then let them know that I also write for their children's age. But there's so many stories of people. It is. I was just at my child's athletics carnival this morning, and one of the mothers, her husband was in a terrible accident and has gone from "you will probably never walk again" to now walking with just one single cane. And he's out there trying to do all these things. And I said, oh, do you reckon he'd be interested in being interviewed? And she went, oh, definitely. You'll just have to bleep out all the swearing. And I said, oh, that's
Mm.
fine. We can do that. These people are around us all the time. They are
Yeah.
around our children. They are around, they're in the supermarket with you. They're next to you in the bus. They're everywhere. And while you can't go and take the time to talk to everybody, if you just think that, once a week you say, oh, well, what did you do for work back in the day? Or, what, I don't know, what hobbies do you have? Whatever it is, those questions we get told, at networking events and things like that to ask, it can open up the most fascinating conversations for us as well as our kids. And then we're teaching them that lesson as well, because they're seeing us do that.
Yeah. And the other thing is, do you feel, I'd love to know your thoughts on this, but do you feel that maybe people don't tell their story as much these days, or they don't tell people about them as well, because maybe there's that humility factor of them just, maybe feeling like they're showing off if they're telling someone what they've been through as well, and
Yeah.
or they don't want to be seen as a victim.
Absolutely. Or I think too, it's that people are so busy that it's just they don't have time to listen to me and waffling on. Like, I think we just have this, and that's very Australian, isn't it? To not take up space, to minimize ourselves. Oh God, the amount of people that I've asked that have said to me, God, I don't have a story worthy of the book. Goodness, it's not that they don't want to. They have then said, oh, all right then. As soon as you sit down and you say, okay, so where were you born? And then just tell me what happened. That's all I'm asking is, okay, so then after school, what did you do? Like I'm not asking these philosophical questions. I'm asking, and then what? That's it. And then we get to the end of the conversation, and these people are taking a deep sort of sigh and going, oh my goodness, yeah, I guess there is a story there. Hey, like I think we minimize ourselves and we make ourselves smaller for others. And there's a famous content creator called Elise Myers, and she says, if I'm too much for you, go find less. And I love that theory. Not that you want to go and be the loudest person in the room everywhere you go, but surround yourself with people who love you and enjoy you for the space you take up. They let you take up that space. And I think we teach our kids, oh, don't tell, and I try and I'll say, hey, tell so and so how many tries you scored on the weekend. That sort of conversation can be all it takes for the kid to go, hey, yeah, I'm really proud of myself. This proves mum and dad are really proud of me. And this person, mum and dad have deemed that this person is a person that I can speak up about myself and say, oh, yeah, I 100-meter run away, down the sideline, blah, blah, blah. Our kids need to know that they have that village around them of people that they can take up space around. And I think we spend a lot of time wanting our kids to be quiet and smaller and just be good. It's not who we are. We need to take up space sometimes. And I think that's important to let ourselves do that. But also, if we give others the opportunity, we say, really, that was your job. That's fascinating. I'd love to hear more about that. Then they return the favor and go, oh, that's enough about me. What about you? And it gives us the opportunity then to talk about ourselves a little bit too, without that feeling of, oh, how awkward is this? Because it's part of a bigger conversation. And I think those things, come home after, like if you come home after your day where you've spoken to this wonderful woman that you spoke to before, tell your kids about it. Say, do you know, I met this woman today and she's going through something and she told me this and then that happened and I learnt this from it. It was really fascinating. Your kids will hear a bit of that and they will take that on board and think, oh, that's really interesting. And they might look at someone who's clearly, not looking like they're feeling very well. They might look at them and think, how brave are they? Just like that person dad told me about. It sticks in our brains. And that's how we learn to treat others better and how to respond to different situations is by being exposed to people's stories, I believe.
Yes, and being exposed to people's stories, and I think the main message behind the book and the main driver in the initiative, I support so much, and it's inspired me to ask more people about their stories. Not just my
Yeah,
clients and
great.
people that I talk to regularly, but just others in general.
Yeah,
Because, like what you said, most people are willing to share and they want to, and we all have
yeah.
something we can learn from each other. And continuing on from that, can I ask if anybody wanted to buy a copy of the book or to get in contact with you? What would be the best way
Yeah.
for them to do that?
The best way would be to visit my website, which is katherineowens.com. There is a contact link there. There's a page that's, like the good old contact page. And there's also a shop there. So there is currently the paperback book, which is available for sale there. And there's also an ebook, as in you could use on your Kindle type thing. And very soon, any day now, I'm just figuring it all out as we speak, there will be an audiobook. So that will be available on all the streaming services that are around. But the book is also available on Amazon and all those bits and pieces. But yeah, my website is perfect. That would be the greatest place. I get the most benefit out of people purchasing through that way. And yeah, I'd love to send out some orders to people, to your listeners.
Yeah, no, it's I encourage anyone listening to this that would like to know more to check it out, to get a copy of the book. I'm going to put the link to your website into the description of this episode as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and lastly, can I ask, just when it comes to your book and those listening to it, if you could just maybe leave our listeners just with a couple of notes or probably a message, if there's anything that you want them to take out of today's episode or the book, I should say, more importantly, what would that be?
Yeah, well, I thought I might just read the little blurb at the back of the book, or the first paragraph of it anyway. Extraordinary Stories shows that everyone has a story powerful enough to feature in a published book. Through 17 real-life adventures, readers meet people whose lives are shocking, heartwarming, inspiring, and everything in between. These stories prove you don't need to be rich or famous to live a meaningful, successful life. Jumping between different times, places, and perspectives, you'll discover how much there is to learn from the people around you. This book encourages stronger connections, honest conversations, and a deeper sense of kindness and empathy. The more we understand each other, the better we all become.
I love that, Catherine. And
Thank you.
I like to finish all my episodes off with a dad joke.
Oh, love
And
it.
today's a pretty serious episode, I know, but I think this relates to literally what you just said about, not having to be rich and famous. But the question is, how do celebrities stay cool?
Oh, good question. I don't know how.
They've got fans.
Oh, I should have. I'm annoyed at myself. I feel like I
I know,
should have
it
known that.
wasn't obvious. I thought you were going to get it, actually. So,
Is it appropriate for your guest to also add her current favorite dad joke?
yes, please.
Oh, perfect. Okay, my son told me this one the other day. Why did the man get hit by a bike every day?
I don't know.
He was stuck in a vicious cycle.
I love it. Vicious cycle.
My 11-year-old told me that, and I thought that was very good. I liked it.
I love it. I love it. It's so good. I'm going to steal that one. Actually, I can't use it on this
please.
anymore because everyone knows it's not
No,
mine.
I've
but
ruined
I'm
it
gonna
for you.
steal
I
it.
should have sent it to you after.
I'll still steal it.
Yeah,
Love it.
perfect.
No, thank you so much again, Catherine, for joining us. And I hope people listen to this, pick up this book or listen to the ebook and learn something from it for, that they can pass on to others as well. But thank you.
Yeah, and it really is a book that is, we're kind of targeting around that 12 to 13 up. I have plenty of parents and adults reading it, or grandparents even reading it to then pass on to the youth in their life. It's an easy read for adults, but there really is something in there for most ages, beyond that, those young kids, older than that. So anyone who's interested, even if you are aware it's just an easy read, you'll get something out of it. So thank you so much for your time, Michael. I really appreciate being here.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases, and feel free to share this episode with any friends or family that you think it might benefit. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.